If you're anything like me, it's day 7 in quarantine and your kid stole your iPad about 6 days ago. So let's take a look at Apple's new iPad Pro and see what makes it so new. Since the original announcement of the iPad over 10 years ago, the iPad has typically been considered the fourth screen device. Your TV was the first screen, your computer was the second, and the third was the mobile phone. With the release of the iPad Pro, Apple is trying to change that narrative. Apple released 2 videos, Your Next Computer is Not Your Computer and
How to Correctly Use a Computer.
In both videos, Apple is clearly trying to make the case that the iPad is the second screen, taking the place of the computer, and they're starting by targeting pros with the iPad Pro. But why would Apple do that? If you look at Apple's financials of the last year, you can see that revenue went down for the Mac and iPhone business unit in the fourth quarter. However, iPad was up 17%. Apple would love for you to buy an iPad, pair it with some Airpods or Beats, buy plenty of accessories like keyboards, Apple Pencils, and dongles. Apple's been doing great at hardware advances, so it's no surprise that the display, the camera, and performance are getting better and better. The introduction of LiDAR was a surprise, but this seems to be an extension of what Apple's been doing with the FaceTime camera. LiDAR stands for light detection and ranging. It sends light beams and then captures the reflection to figure out the range and spatial orientation of the iPad. It's been used by the Mars rover and some self-driving cars, and now the iPad. In particular, this is really going to help improve the augmented reality experience. In terms of AR, I think it breaks down into 2 areas to explore. The first is gaming. We've seen a lot of AR-enhanced games, and while they're fun for a few minutes, apart from Pokemon Go, few had lasting value. With better cameras, these games will continue to improve, and we expect to see some really interesting developments in this space. LiDAR cameras also set the stage for AR glasses that we know Apple is secretly working on. The second area in AR is how it's being used professionally, and this is where the iPad Pro really shines in terms of its technology. Several years ago, Google had introduced AR into its larger tablets, and Facebook's Oculus had been pushing into this space. iPad LiDAR is likely to find fans in architecture, space planning, interior design, and Apple's videos are showing this future in effect. I know a number of folks who have tried to move to the iPad as their primary computer over the years, and this has had many issues, but Apple is systematically working through these to remove their objections. The main objection is that certain editing workflows are just easier with your hands on the keyboard and trackpad, so Apple is introducing what can best be described as a variation of the traditional mouse and pointer experience. It's a really clever design, and the user experience of the trackpad interface is particularly interesting. When not in use, the pointer disappears, and when it is in use, the pointer snaps the controls as you get close. As you hover over text, spreadsheets, and other controls, the pointer shows context. Apple is even taking advantage of Fitts' law to make sure that the edge gestures, like Control Center or task switching, are particularly easy. The full-size keyboard also removes many of the objections for longer typing on the iPad. The other main objection for using an iPad as a computer is the lack of pro-level applications. Apple has been chipping away at this problem, and some tools, such as Adobe Photoshop and other pro-level tools, have started to be available. However, even Apple's own pro-level tools, such as Final Cut Pro, Motion, and Xcode, haven't yet gotten their first-generation iPad versions, making it hard to convince both pros and larger software companies to take the plunge. The iPad is looking like a great computer alternative, but it's unlikely to replace your computer if you're a true pro. Pros in audio, video, photography, architecture, and engineering are likely to need tools and applications that aren't yet available on the iPad Pro. Apple is making great progress on this front with a technology called Mac Catalyst, and this is allowing developers to share more and more code that goes between the iPhone, the iPad, and the Mac, and this will help year over year. So if you're a pro, the new screen, keyboard, and performance and LiDAR enhanced cameras are certainly going to come in handy, but what if you're not a pro? For non-pros, I actually think this could be an absolutely great computer replacement. Web browsing, document editing, portability is a great option, and the only potential downside is the price. When comparing the iPad Pro with the new MacBook 13-inch Air, the two are almost the exact same price. If you configure both with 256 gigabytes of storage and keyboard, it's about $84 more expensive. So is the iPad Pro a computer replacement? Probably not for true pros. It'll still continue to be a fourth screen, but for most I do think it's a great format, and I definitely see the tablet slate is likely to become the second screen of the future. Thanks so much for watching. Appreciate your time. I'm Raiz. I'll see you here in quarantine.